Mic check 1 2 1 2. It's the Y2K collector. And to hunt or not to hunt? That is the question. And it's a question that I'm asking myself more and more these days because video game hunting just isn't the same. I don't want to say that the thrill is gone, but it's definitely changed, and we've seen some factors change the way hunting is done, where people go, and how we feel about it in general. Now, there are some things that we still saw happen in 2024. One of which was yard sales. I think yard sales were still a very viable option for a lot of people who live in parts of the country where A, yard sales are prevalent, and B, yard sales can happen all year round. If you live on the East Coast, odds are there are zero yard sales happening near you, especially when the high is 29 degrees. But I mean, for the most part, if you even just judge by what you see on YouTube, yard sales are still a very viable option for finding retro games at a reasonable price. Now, there is a caveat with that, which is that there's a lot of competition. You're seeing a lot of competition, and we're going to revisit competition here in a moment. But yard sales were still a viable option in 2024. I think pawn shops were not as bountiful as they were maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I think pawn shops were still an option, but 9 times out of 10, what you were going to find at a pawn shop was maybe a bunch of like PS4 sports games, maybe a couple like random 360 games. You might luck up and find, a good game, a decent game. A rare, like expensive game was like a once in a year type of thing. But pawn shops really weren't like a premier place to go. Thrift stores, and by thrift stores, I mean like Goodwill and Salvation Army. Goodwill and Salvation Army were pretty much a wrap, for the mere fact that Goodwill adopted a policy where pretty much all their video games, especially retro games, are shipped to their headquarters or wherever it is that they, process their video games for their online store. So pretty much everything from Goodwill is done in their online store. There are certain parts of the country, certain Goodwills across the country where you may still be able to walk in there and find some retro games. I know people still do that. And if you are lucky enough to live in one of those areas where more than likely the employees just aren't following protocol, for the most part, Goodwills don't really carry anything worthwhile anymore. They just don't. The last worthwhile game I picked up at a GameStop, sorry, we'll get to GameStop, but the last worthwhile game I picked up at a Goodwill was Silent Hill 2. That was the last worthwhile game, was a greatest hits edition. It's the last time I found anything worthwhile at a Goodwill. Now, and then even then, when you do find games at Goodwill, they're priced up. They're no longer cheap. They're no longer discounted. A lot of times they're either at market price or higher. Unless you happen to find them on a day where, they're color coded and the color that you find them at is like 50% off, maybe you'll look up there. But the same thing happens at most thrift stores. So there is a chain of thrift stores in my area, and even just thrift stores in general. They've all gotten hip to the game. So, they're pricing things up. So in 2024, you could still go to thrift stores and Goodwills, but odds are, again, very, very slim pickings. 2024 mom and pop shops were still an option, but they really only made sense like really on Black Friday, depending on the types of games you are looking for. If you're looking for a game that you're just willing to pay up, pay market price for, then a mom and pop shop was your best bet. But if you were looking for underpriced games, mom and pop shops are going to continue to be what they are. They're going to just follow whatever the market price is, and their games are going to be priced at that amount. Unfortunately, you still have those mom and pop shops that do not believe in pricing the more expensive games, which is super annoying for a lot of game hunters out there. But that's still something that I think you're going to see in 2025. I think you're still going to see that moving forward. And then obviously you've got your retailers. Retailers are just When I say retailers, I mean major retailers like Target, Walmart, Best Buy. Unfortunately, those institutions are fading away. They're fading away when it comes to carrying physical games, physical media. They're pretty much moving away from that. There was a time where you could walk down the aisle at a Target, at a Best Buy, and like, see some good stuff. And don't get me wrong, there are some Best Buys that they do have like a good like selection of Switch games for sure, like some limited run stuff. There are a few, but a lot of times what you'll see is pretty much dry out there. And then last but not least, you have GameStop. 2024 showed us that GameStop is still somewhat a viable option for video game hunting. Whether you're looking for modern games, PlayStation 5, 4, Switch, or you're going retro, PS3, 2, 1, Xbox, GameCube, Genesis, Super Nintendo, GameStop has proven that they are capable of being a viable option for game hunting. But I think that there are things that are changing in 2025, and I already see it happening, that is going to impact how, I want to say, hunters really engage in all of these different areas for picking up video games. One of the first things that is impacting this in 2025 is competition. And it's the word that I mentioned at the very beginning of the video. Competition quietly is at an all-time high. You don't see the game hunting videos as much as you did before, but best believe that there are a lot of guys out there and girls out there who don't have YouTube, who aren't on social media, but they're quietly sniping games left and right. If you've ever gone into your local GameStop, Goodwill, Best Buy, whatever, wondering where all the games at, you best believe that there is somebody in your neighborhood quietly just picking up the games. Quietly just going in, they're not making noise about it. They're just buying up the games, and they're either adding it to their collection or posting it to their online store. And the competition is real. You often will not see your competition because they're probably going to be there when you're not there. But the times that you will run into your competition the most is when it's an area or an event that you have to be at a certain time, which is why you see most of the conflict that happens when game hunting happens at yard sales, because everybody tries to get to the yard sale super early. They're standing out there waiting. And then once the yard sale opens, they're all bum rushing tubs and bins, and then it becomes a conflict. The same thing kind of happens with some thrift stores. There's thrift stores near me where the line goes down the block and around the corner with people waiting to pick up games. And if you are not the first in that line, you better believe that by the time you get in the store, someone's already grabbed every single game and it's gone. So competition is at an all-time high, and I think it's a little bit deflating for those who are trying to get into the hunt. So it's just not as fun. Now, there is one venue that I didn't mention, which is flea markets. I think flea markets are going to continue to be a viable option in 2025. But again, one of the things you're going to have to deal with is price increases. A lot of people are struggling with their margins, with their profit margins, because sourcing video games isn't as easy as it was before. And so, the hunt, it's just going to be very difficult. I think another thing that makes it challenging is that, it seemed like we had a lot more time in like 2020 and 2021, because we did. There were a lot of things were closed. You couldn't do a lot. So there was a lot more time to hunt. Me, the past few days, just with, 2025 getting underway and life responsibilities kicking in, I'm just finding it more and more difficult to even, make videos. I like to try to tap in with my community at least 3 times a day, because my videos are never really super long. They're like 8-10 minutes, 15, maybe 20 minutes max. They're not super long, and they're not time intensive. They don't take, I don't do a lot of production. I like to keep it personal, and I like to just invite you all down into the game room just to have a quick conversation. So, but all that being said, the time factor, I think, is what's kind of killing a lot of people, and I don't think a lot of people who were heavy into the game hunting scene have been able to get into their hunting rhythm, where they, have their local spots that they frequent. They haven't been able to get into a hunting rhythm, and I think it's made it challenging to source new video games. So in 2025, what does that mean in terms of hunting? Because game hunting is changing. I think, to go back to something that I said at the beginning of the year and the end of last year, networking. I think networking is going to be your best friend. I think that's where the hunt is going. I think a lot of people are going to need to start networking so that they can know who's selling their collection before they take their collection to the thrift store or to the game store. You want to know who's getting ready to sell so that you don't have to even deal with the competition. But that only happens when you put your feelers out there, you build a network, and you build a community of people that you trust. I've never used my YouTube platform for that. I've never asked anyone to send me games or let me know if they're selling, send me a list. I've had people reach out to me via Instagram. I've had people message me, here letting me know, hey, Y2K, listen, I'm selling, let me know if you're interested. I've had people ask to buy games out of my collection. I probably get that more. I get a lot more people asking to buy games out of my collection, but I'm not trying to sell to my audience or to my community. I don't know. It's just, for me, like selling video games or to my audience or buying video games from my audience, it kind of feels like, you ever hear the saying, don't do business with family? It's like things get messy. It's kind of like how I feel. Maybe my opinion on that will change as the year goes on, but I just like to keep YouTube. I like to keep, this what it is. And, if you guys want to come and hang with me for a little bit, then you can. If not, and you got other better things to do, you can go do that too. But I do think hunting is going to change. And I do think you're going to start to see a lot more changes. So I want to just talk a little bit about just some things that I picked up in terms of returns that I made and exchanges that I made and trades that I made. So, in keeping in the spirit of not buying any games in January, I was able to get rid of some games because there were some games that I got in that lot that I didn't necessarily want to keep, but I didn't feel like going through the hassle of selling them. So I did some trades. So I do have some trades, and then I also have some exchanges. I actually wound up returning some things that I had gotten in the mail, some games that I had gotten from my buy two get one haul, and I made some exchanges and picked up some games from that. So one of the things that I exchanged for was this copy of X-Men Destiny. This is actually a pretty cool like action adventure game that I've had a couple times. I had it on the PS3 and I sold that copy. So I saw it and I was like, I'm going to get this back and add it back into my collection and actually play and dive into this some more. This is a really cool X-Men game and it's very cheap. It's surprisingly cheap, being that it's only $10. This is one of those games though that once they start to incorporate the X-Men into the MCU in this like new phase of the MCU, I guarantee you the more they start to incorporate X-Men characters into the MCU, you're going to see games like this go up. I'm not saying to go buy this game because of that. I'm saying this because we see this happening with Sonic the Hedgehog right now, where Sonic the Hedgehog games are shooting up in price because of the movie. We saw it happen with Deadpool and Wolverine, and we're going to continue to see it as time goes on. I can guarantee you that the more they incorporate the X-Men into the MCU, you're going to see some of these X-Men games go up. Maybe, maybe not. But history has shown us that film and TV shows do impact the price of some of these games. So I went ahead and picked this up. It was pretty cheap. I mostly got a refund for a lot of the stuff that I returned, but I did get that in its place. On top of that, GameStop did have this gnarly gold PlayStation 3 controller. I mean, this is just sick. I've never been like a controllers guy. Like I want to have like, all the special edition controllers. I just like certain colors when it comes to controllers. And so I went ahead and snagged up this gold PlayStation 3 controller. I just think it's really sick looking. I picked up a smoke gray PlayStation 2 controller. I think that looks sick. That's the controller that I use these days to play my PlayStation 2. So these were two really cool game items that I picked up in exchange. And then I also made a trade. So I traded away a lot of games that I got in my haul at the beginning of the year. And one of the games that I traded for was this copy of Puyo Pop Fever. I'm a big fan of like Bubble Bobble and like what's the Neo Geo puzzle game? I can't think of it. If you could think of it, let me know down in the comments. But I went ahead and picked up this copy of Puyo Pop. It's in pretty good condition. This isn't a super rare, expensive game, anything like that, but this is just a very cool game that I did want to add to my GameCube collection. I do like games like this, like the whole Bubble Bobble, Puzzle Bubble. I can't remember what the name of it, but wanted to add that as well. Also added a sealed copy of Folklore into the collection. So I already have a copy of Folklore. This is a copy that I may trade up as well. So I traded a bunch of like, games that I knew I wasn't going to keep in the collection. I don't just want to have a bunch of games. I'd rather consolidate like 5 games into one game that holds the same value. That's what I did here to get this copy of Folklore. And I may actually bundle this together with something else to trade up for an even heavier hitting game. So we'll see. This is going to stay in the trade box. This is just something that I'm adding to the war chest. Or I may keep this sealed copy and sell my used copy of Folklore. We'll see. We'll see which direction I go there. But the last thing that I added was this Nintendo GameCube Wavebird. I already had a Wavebird in my collection, but I know that I'm going to start playing some more Mario Kart Double Dash over this spring. My daughter's getting a little older and she's getting a little bit, better at some of these games. And I don't really want to use the wired GameCube controller. There may be other options out there, but I like keeping it stock. I like keeping it OEM. And so this is just another cool one to add to my collection. Also, I'm not sure if the receiver on my original Wavebird works anymore, because the last time I tried to use it, it wasn't working for me. Maybe I didn't have the channel set properly. I'll try it out in a little bit. But yeah, this is what I was able to add. And like I said, even without me like looking or really trying to hunt, there's really not a whole lot, but there are a lot of people selling. There's a lot of people selling, but you're not really seeing it translate to stuff on shelves. And if it does hit the shelves, it's priced supermarket value. So let me know what you think down in the comments. Do you think game hunting is going to change in 2025? Do you think it's going to be for the better? Do you think it's going to be worse? I'm interested to know your thoughts, and I'll catch you in the next video. It's the Y2K Collector. Have a good weekend.